Hello, welcome to Trust Your Glitter. This is Christy, and I'm here to discuss this week's astrology between the 11th of March and the 17th of March. And for purposes of people that do want to get, your week ahead astrology, I might become a little bit more political over the next few weeks. So I just want to kind of disclaimer that up front. If you're just like, I want straight astrology, I don't want to talk about politics, I'm too tired of hearing about politics. So just know that if you are, this might not be the episode for you, and totally cool. I am a stand-up comedian and I have knowledge of astrology, and this is a language that I am extremely passionate about. And astrology is all about following patterns. It's pattern recognition, and it's something that builds on itself. And astrology is kind of this beautiful mosaic of like allowing ourselves to see what something can bring to the collective. And so collectively we are undergoing a lot of change at once. And on Sundays, I do a weekly meditation as brought to the forefront from Pam George, who's an astrologer, and my friend Nikki. And she informed me that she was going to be doing this 2 p.m. It's 7 p.m. UK time. I think it's 2 p.m. Eastern time. But it's weekly. So every week I do this meditation, and this week I was guided during the meditation to talk politics on the podcast today. And I generally record every Sunday for the week ahead, kind of in the energy of the week. I like to do it that way. I've kind of always liked to do it that way, just because I like to be in the middle of what's actually going on. And so as we break this down for the week ahead, there's not a lot of transits. We open up the week, Venus, the goddess of love, the planet of the divine feminine. It can be romantic energy, but Miss Venus is entering the sign of Pisces on the 11th. And then we close out the week with a first quarter moon at 27 degrees Gemini. That's at 12:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So those are our transits this week. That's it. That's what we got. And as I record this, this is in the energy of this lovely new moon in the sign of Pisces. As this new moon brings us out of this astrological year, this week between the 11th and the 17th is preparing us for the astrological new year. And for those who make vision boards, etc., it depends on how you tackle your year ahead. This is a really good time. This is a really good week to kind of be in that energy of preparing for the solar astrological new year. We've gone through the lunar new year. Now it's the sun's time to prepare for this. So the way I kind of look at this week is we are building towards action this week. We are getting ready. We are working on a vision in general, because we're entering eclipse season, and I view that we're in eclipse season. We just had this new moon in Pisces, and then our next lunar cycle will be an eclipse. That will be a lunar eclipse, and then we go into our solar eclipse. So this is a really big time. And if I look at just breaking down the astrology week to week, it's kind of difficult because I view this as a full-blown community assignment. We are in a universal communal assignment right now, especially with Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. So every week is going to bring us new highlights that show us a greater perspective. And so the political part of this is, it's tough to look at a microcosm when the macrocosm of everything is war and, humanitarian crises that have been ongoing on this planet. But we're going to become more and more aware. And so last week there was a lot going on with Mercury and Uranus, where we're feeling these rumblings of what's to come and what this eclipse wants to highlight for us all, this total solar eclipse on April 8th in the sign of Aries. It's a very big eclipse. I don't know, like, obviously people are creating their own narratives or looking at, Christian, you know, biblical sort of texts on this, or, different religions are looking at it in a different way. But if I'm looking at the data, if I'm looking at the fact that the United States, the crossing of this eclipse is going across the US from the southwest to the northeast, and this is creating a cross from August 21st of 2017's eclipse, and what that brought us then and where we're at now. I was in New York City for much of that time, and I remember how many marches were going on and participated in marches between 2016 2017, and where those nodes were between, Leo and Aquarius. Now that our north node is in Aries, our south node is in the sign of Libra, we're going towards the need to reframe who we are as an individual so that we can clean up who we are personally, so that we can connect from a perspective of not of being ego free in many ways, of stepping back from our ego. So this has been a long journey for a lot of us who are on healing what the ego is. I mean, this is a personal journey that I share here on this podcast. I'm just learning how to be a human on this planet. And I do think it's interesting that a lot of spiritual leaders, like there is an instance with a man named Jay Shetty, who I really liked his, story. I really liked the podcast he's been on, but it's interesting to see his journey and what's happened with him over the last week plus. And then I had to unfollow, continuing in an unfollowing thing where it's like, maybe the I am perspective is maybe we're not supposed to follow spiritual leaders. Even if you hear something on this podcast, even though I'm being called to continue to talk on a podcast, not everything I say is going to resonate. Not everything I say or predict is going to be right. I'm looking at patterns. I'm being called to say certain things. But at the end of the day, I fucked up a lot in my life. And I'm trying to share more of that journey because I was stuck in a podcast loop of like listening to people that are influencers talk about their perfect kitchens and, stuff like that. And I'm like, well, fuck, like, I don't know how to do that. And I still follow the astrological transits each week, but as we see society shift, the reality is, for example, like the TikTok bill in the US, the TikTok ban bill, and everything that's going on with that, and the fact that, in the United States, we have freedom of speech. And it's so fucking weird that this app that gets a lot of flack has taught so many people so many things. And not only has the TikTok app taught people things, it's also been a beautiful source of organizing against a corrupt system. And also, honestly, like, I feel like many people would agree, has been the best source of news for people because it's literally people directly involved in situations, putting their lives on TikTok, and I'm going to continue to reference like the Kellogg's boycott, which starts on April 1st, has a beautiful organization. Like, so many people are organizing on TikTok for that. You know, there are people live streaming and people making artwork for it. Like, there's a reason why we're all coming together. You know, you can learn how to create your own garden on TikTok in a different way than Instagram would. Like, it's very different. It's very collective. It's very Aquarian up on TikTok. So I think it's interesting that, you know, here's a Congress and we have this House of Representatives and then the Senate that, with the State of the Union address, you look around and there's people that have no idea what the fuck they're doing. They have no idea what an average person, I don't think most of the demo of the House of Representatives or the Senate or the cabinet or the Supreme Court actually understands what it's like to go into Walmart and get groceries by, like, on a budget. I would, like, I don't think they're gonna be doing that shit. So, let alone the feeling of a CEO of a major company saying something on a major news platform about how people should be eating cereal for dinner to save money and then hiking up the prices of their products. It's interesting what we're going to be seeing. The global fires that are going on. That's very Aries. Aries is Mars action. So I just want to say that up front because the next few weeks are going to be highlighting stuff like this on an exponential level, and not even with the eclipse on April 8th, but we also are going to be having a major conjunction just a couple weeks after the eclipse, and I'll talk about that more and more as the weeks go on. But Jupiter and Uranus are going to be aligning in the sky in the sign of Taurus, and that's going to be a really big deal. And so this week doesn't give us these major aspects. We have a nice closing one at the end of the week, but during this week, we have Venus. She enters the sign of Pisces on the 11th. On the 12th, Venus at 0 degrees Pisces is semi-square to the North Node. In Aries, we have a lot of semi-squares and a lot of semi-sextiles this week. And a semi-square is when planets are 45 degrees apart. A semi-sextile is, when planets are 30 degrees apart. Now, the way I'm going to read this as a broad stroke is there's moments of tension and there's moments of discernment through the tension. That's how I'm going to read it. So, Venus semi-square the North Node could be a tension with our heart's desire and the reality of facing our true north. Facing who we truly the fuck are. Facing the who the fuck am I? And that's going to be a question of the week because we're going to start feeling that pull towards the astrological new year. When the sun gets to 0 degrees Aries for the spring equinox. On the 12th, we also have Mercury at 4 degrees Aries semi-square to Uranus at 19 degrees Taurus. So, again, the I am factor, who the fuck am I, Aries? And I'm going to tell you about it, Aries. Pretty blunt. Semi-square to Uranus and Taurus, the great revolutionary here. We have an in real time revolution happening. So we're also on the 12th experience Venus semi-sextile to Pluto. That's 30 degrees apart to Pluto. So look at this as this is a textbook. We have Venus and Pisces, semi-sextile, 30 degrees apart to Pluto and Aquarius. So they're next door neighbors. Venus again, my heart's desire, right? You're going to sit and be like, what is my heart's desire? With Pluto and Aquarius saying, well, yeah, but the collective approach to this, how does this affect us all? What's the fundamental effect on us all? How is this for the greater good? And that's going to be questions imposed throughout 2024. So it's not, a lot of the questions that are posed this week do not have answers right now. Especially with what's going on all over the world. There are mass exterminations, there's genocides going on. Multiple genocides going on at this point. You know, there's, I believe, some shit going down in Haiti. It's pretty awful. I'm not gonna like get into the details of things, but it's I mean we have the ostrich again. I'll keep saying this, but even the most apolitical people are being shaken in certain ways. And for those who continue to ignore it, and this is what I got through meditation, because I was like, I don't want to say this on the podcast, but for those who continue to ignore it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse until you can't ignore it. So it's either going to get you through, you know, what's going on with you know, those who are being, you know, killed overseas, or it's going to be at your local grocery store where somebody's going to be trying to buy you know, formula for their baby, and they're going to get their credit card denied, and they're going to have to, you know, you're going to be witness to it somewhere. You're going to see it somewhere. Or it hails in your fucking place that doesn't normally get hail. You're going to be at your nice little sunny day at the beach, and all of a sudden it's going to start hailing. I'm just saying. Again, I'm just a comic who loves astrology. Just a comic who loves astrology. Okay. So on the 14th of March, Pi Day 3.14, happy birthday to my friend SMG. You know who you are, girl. Keep it classy, girl. So on Pi Day, Venus semi-square to Chiron. So this is something where we saw Venus semi-square to the North Node on the 12th. She is semi-square to Chiron. Again, we're getting these little glimmers of this eclipse. Our heart's desire is saying, love one another. Let's be one with music and art and kindness and compassion. Venus in Pisces and Chiron near that North Node in Aries, and we'll talk about that next week. Near that North Node in Aries is saying, well, hey, just to let you know, this is part of maybe some shit that went down in your life that caused trauma, or there's some trauma happening where you just have to really face it and discern through what this actually means. There's a lot of recognition of generational trauma, period. And this has been an ongoing pattern since 2023. Maybe for some, maybe for others, this was a longer range healing for you. If you started really looking into generational trauma before 2023, most likely you're here to teach others how to heal it, or teach others how to recognize what it is, or to teach others how to heal their shadow, or to not be afraid of their shadow wounds and understand that we are all kind of going through this collective shadow recognition here. On the same day, Mercury at 8 degrees Aries is semi-square to Mars at 23 degrees Aquarius. So there's tension. And Mercury in Aries is ruled by Mars. So the 14th could be a day where we do hear a lot of skirmish type stuff. A lot of things, and again, I want to honor that, yes, it's love and light. Yes, we are light beings on this planet learning a light language, and we are frequency, and we are all vibing, right? But the vibe right now is Martian as fuck. The vibe right now is, here's our collective mind, here's our voice in the blunt sign of Aries, in a tense connection with Mars, the god of war, in Aquarius. I kind of feel like Pi Day is going to be like, come the fuck on now. Are you kidding me? Type stuff. Like, really, really? There's going to be a really, really here. And again, remember, this week is a building week. It's a week that builds the tension. The recognition that we're heading into a new season. We're heading into some big eclipses. On the 16th, we have Mercury 11 degrees of Aries, semi-sextile to Saturn in Pisces at 11 degrees. They can decide if they want to get along and learn from each other, Saturn being the planet of responsibility in the compassionate, kind sign of Pisces, with Mercury being like, motherfucker, I want to tell you off. Saturn has experience. Mercury in Aries is like, fuck your experience. I have passion. I have shit to say. And they have to really decide where to either agree to disagree or to respect one another. I guess it's the same thing. But between the 14th, 15th, and the 16th, if you're in a personal fight with somebody, you've got to make that decision. Or the eclipses are going to make that decision. And if you're like in anything where you're trying to leave a place that is using you in any way, whether it's like, corporate America, which is going through its changes because of Pluto, a really bad relationship, a really bad pattern, this week is when there's the rumblings of getting the fuck out of that pattern and starting a new way of being. So then on the 17th, we close out this bracket of time with the sun in Pisces at 27 degrees Pisces, conjunct Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces. Now I want to say this is at 7:22 a.m. and the sun is at 27:22 and Neptune is at 27:22. How beautiful. So this is hope. This is psychic connections. This is the same day as the first quarter moon, who does want us to take some sort of action. I feel like this is verbal action, and here's why. The first quarter moon is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, and as we rolled through this podcast, Mercury is super active in the sign of Aries as we are getting ready to get into Aries season. So the action could just be, you gotta say it. You gotta tell them. You gotta, resignations, breakups. These are the kinds of things we're going to be seeing over the next month. So staying centered may be tougher this week and part of the challenge. That's kind of the whole perspective of the week, but I love the fact that we close out this week with a first quarter moon. So as we went through our new moon, our moon is going to start to wax and she gets to her quarter. With that Sun-Neptune conjunction, we've seen this 27 degrees Pisces and 27 degrees Gemini before. This is a pattern that we've had over the years. We saw this with a Venus retrograde and Mars. We had squares with Neptune in 2020. So if this week takes you back to kind of an old connection, this is not allowing that old connection to defy you, or that old circumstance of codependency to defy you. The North Node is being activated far too much right now in Aries, and it's going to continue to be. And next week we're going to be kind of looking at Mercury with the nodes and with Chiron. So if I were to kind of sum up this week, is we're in preparation mode still. And I'm looking at this as we're being shown where our great strength is. We're in the year of the dragon. We're in the year of 8, which is the tarot card strength. The infinite possibilities. And my guess is that's why there's just so much turmoil right now, is because we're the powers that are not the greatest in this spiritual war, or this energetic war, as Whitney Webb says. Is trying so hard to make us forget the fact that we are here to do really cool shit. So as we're being kind of given these glimmers of like, oh wow, I'm really actually here to do some really cool shit, it's almost like, look at the stuff with the internet and the threat that like that's going to eventually be taken away, and things with electricity and networks and airlines having difficulties with helicopters, all these things, aviation incidents, all these things that are happening to scare us. War are trying their absolute hardest to get us to forget the fact that we're really here to create such beauty. And it sucks that it has to be that way, for us to kind of realize that, these elites that are in power are trying their absolute hardest to make us forget our own power. And so Aries this week is just shaking us up enough, Mercury and Aries, to get us to ask these questions of like, am I really meant to just be subservient? Mercury and Aries is in no way subservient. So I really hope this helps. And that's how I'm approaching the week. I'm just, it's little actions this week. You might not see a big outcome, but it's the tiny, tiny things that will build and show us the greater reality of like, oh wow, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met this person, I wouldn't have ended up here, that kind of stuff that might make sense later on down the road. So I hope you have an amazing week ahead, and thank you so much for listening to Trust Your Glitter podcast. I'm Christy Belich. You can find me on all social media. So much gratitude, and thank you.